Hello everyone, I hope you're well. I just thought I'd pop by and create an off-the-cuff video. My husband's watching the TV, he's watching some of the darts, so I thought I would come along and just create something off the cuff. So I literally picked up these pieces of card. This was a piece that was left over from cutting a 7x7 card from a piece of A3 card, and this was left, so I trimmed it slightly. And the actual card blank is 4.5 by 8. The actual piece to go on top is 4 inches by 7.5. So it's a sort of a length, a type of DL card. So let me just decide which side I'm going to use. Tracy can't decide. I mean, come on. So this is Pink Frog Super Smooth card, and what I thought is I'd just create a project off the cuff, just so that we can do something nice and simple if you've only got a little bit of time. So I've got some low tack tape, so I'm just going to make that a little bit less tacky. So I'm just going to place that across my skin. If you've got any allergies or anything, just make sure you test placing this low tack tape on your skin. If you don't want to place it on your skin, just use a piece of your clothing and wipe it onto your clothing, just so that it's a little less tacky. So what I'm going to do is I'm not going to think about it too much, and I'm just going to lay the low tack tape down just to create some open areas that I can stamp into. And I'm not measuring and I'm not thinking too much. So some areas will be bigger, some will be smaller. So I'm not thinking about that too much. So I'll actually hold this up, she says, after she stuck it down in loads of places. But I'll actually hold this up just so that you can see just what the low tack tape looks like. You can see it better when I hold it up. So you can see, and just see if I put that on. There we go. So you can see the low tack tape. So I've got smaller open areas here. I've sort of got a longer open area there and here. And so I've got so many open areas. So let's place that down onto our card. So what you need then is let's grab a piece of copy paper, so we've got that on one side. And I'm going to use a permanent ink pad. So I'm going to use my black VersaFine Clair, which is the Nocturne. And sometimes, if you've, like me, you've just come upstairs, you just want to create for the fun of it. No deadlines, no pressure, just doing whatever you feel like. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use my new release that was released on Create and Craft on Monday and Tuesday of this week. The bundle and the singles are still available. I think there's only one that's limited stock, which is in this pack. I think it's the Periwinkle is limited stock. But they'll also be available at the stockists on Thursday. And they will be available, I think, on AALL&Create's website on Friday. So whichever is your preferred method. So what I'm going to do is take a look at my stamps and decide which ones I want to use. So I love this kind of thing because what it's about is playing and not getting too stressed about which stamps you use. So I'm going to use Petal Path, which is my A6 stamp set, my new one, and it's 991. And I'm just going to take this stamp here, put that on my border acrylic block, because it's a little bit big for an A7 acrylic block. And what I'm going to do is just see what it'll look like stamped in one of the areas. So I quite like that one. So when I'm going to stamp in this area here that's open, I need to make sure that the area below is masked off so that I don't go over that tape area. So we'll just grab a little bit of tape that we can keep moving and playing with. So we'll just grab a little bit of that. Sorry about my arm reaching across. It's just easier than reaching round. And I'll just hold that down just so that I'm not faffing with it. And what I'm going to do is ink my stamp up. No room on my desk, but nothing new there. So I'm just going to use my new release. And what you can do by doing this is have a little play with all your different stamps, doing different combinations of masking off different areas. But for me, I just want something simple. I just want to enjoy a bit of time creating. So what I'm going to do is, I think, and you don't even have to use the whole stamp. I think I'm just going to stamp that one there, like so. And I'm going to allow that just to soak into the card. Just give it time and don't be in a rush, because sometimes we can lift it a little bit too soon. So just give that a little bit of time. And we'll just lift that up, just so that we've got that stamped in. And you can see where it's touching. Let me just bring my little wipe in. You can see where it's touching the low tack tape there. So, and you can see it here as well, low tack tape. So I'm just going to wipe that just so that I remain clean. So I just add it on there. So what I can do then is you can start using some of your different stamps. So let's move this out of the way. Bring this in. So I've got a reasonable biggish area here. So I think what I might do is use the bluebell. So let's use the bluebell. And you can see this is rather a biggish stamp. You can see it's quite big. So what I can see is what I want to stamp there. So it's great to use the acetate just to decide exactly what you want. And I've not put any ink on, so I'm just having a play just to see what I want where. So I'm going to take the black ink again, just ink, not that you can see me, that bluebell, and just ink that up. And obviously this can be purple, it can be white, it can just be black and white, it can be blue. You don't have to stamp in the black, but I want it to look quite strong in the black. So I'm going to add the image there. And always make sure you're not going over the low tack tape, that you're staying in the areas that are masked off so you're only stamping in the open areas. And what I'm going to do is just give that a little bit of time just to soak into the card. Plus, I'm not going to rush it. It's a project I'm doing just because, well, that's it, just because. So it's lovely just to create, just because you want to create. So I'm just lifting that up, and I adore this image. So pleased with how that's come out. Right, let's now remove that. Let's just wipe that bit of ink there. It's just so, the only reason I wipe it is, it just stops me from dipping my fingers in, because I know what I'm like. I'll dip my fingers in and just smudge that ink everywhere. So I've got those two. So I can also sort of, I've got these little bluebells as well. So let's just take them. And I can just have a look with my acetate. I can just add a couple of those in there as well. And when you're stamping into sort of smaller open areas, just ink more of the stamp than you actually need, because you don't quite know which areas you'll hit within your stamping. So I'm just going to add a little bit of stamping there. There we go. And obviously this bottom bit here, we don't need it in the little aperture. So that will, you'll only have certain areas in your open areas that you've stamped. So this area, for instance, is outside the stamping area. You can see, or you will when you're stamping, it's on your low tack tape. So you just need to remove that. You don't need to remove it if you're not like me and you don't get your hands all over it, then you don't need to wipe. It's just something I do. So let's just place that back. And because you're using that permanent ink won't smudge if I use any water on the top. So let's just place, did I keep the acetate in there? Yes, I did. So kept the acetate in there. And then I've got a little bit of my little mask, which I'll just place back. Then I've also got these smaller stamps. Now I can remove this, so I've not gone any. So I've got this area here, and I've got these two smaller squares here. So what I'm going to do is make sure that I don't go into the area below the low tack tape. And what I'm going to do then is I'm going to take my periwinkle. So we'll take the periwinkle, and we won't leave all the packaging out because it just gets a mess. And then I end up with plastic sheets everywhere. So we'll just place that back in. So we'll then take the periwinkle. There's also a littler stamp in the periwinkle as well, but it's a really good size for an A7 stamp. It really does. It's just really, really good size. When you're picking stamps up like I'm doing as well, just give your fingers a wipe, just so that you don't get in too much of a mess. So you don't have to stamp it straight. It can be stamped like it's entirely up to you. But what I'm going to do is just stamping part of that image in there. I find this quite therapeutic to do as well, just because I can just take my time, just adding little bits of stamped area into the open areas. And again, that's got some areas of silhouette. So because it's got those areas of silhouette, you just need to make sure that you let that soak into your card. You don't need to press too hard. So I'm just giving that time just to soak in. So just adding part of that image, part of that periwinkle, just to the square. I can lift that acrylic block just so I can make sure I get the whole stamp. Again, just so I can see what I've got, I'm just going to wipe the low tack tape. And now obviously I'm touching a stamp that's got all that black ink on, so you just need to be aware of that. You need to just wipe your fingers. Which stamp shall we use now? So let's use the good, and we'll use this flower here. So this one's the good, and it's stamp set 986. And we'll use that one again. Really good size stamp. And I'm going to continue with the border acrylic block. And again, let's have a look how much of that we will get. So yeah, so I'll just ink down to this flower here. So just taking my time to ink up the stamp so it's got a good layer of ink. And then just taking my time to decide on the composition. You know, if I just want it so that, you know, it's got, the stamp's not just placed straight, it's placed at different angles each time, or to the right or to the left, just to make it look a little bit different. So again, just allowing that ink just to absorb into the card, just giving that time, lifting that acrylic block just so that we've got that image on there. And again, I'll just wipe the excess off, just so that we don't get in a mess. So then I can look at what stamped images I've got. And we can add a little bit of text here if we want. So what have we got? So we can stamp original. So on the petal path, there's the word original here. So I can use that word. We'll actually use an A7 acrylic block. So you can decide how you want to add that. So make sure you've got it straight, Tracy, because that really isn't. So then I'm going to use my black ink once again. So everything is stamped in black. And I'm just going to stamp the word original just on there. So just building up a little bit of a composition. So I've got this area here, and there's the low tack tape. So I've got these open areas either side. Well, you don't want them to look the same as the top ones. You want it to be slightly different. So of course we won't use the same image. You see, what you can do is to make it look a little bit different. Let's move that out the way, move the stamps. Let's just make sure that we don't go into any other area. So we can ink the stamp up, but this time don't ink the top of the stamp. Ink the bottom half of the stamp, just so you can get a different area of the stamp. And it's just got this area here that I'm stamping into, and I've got the copy paper at the top just to mask off that area. So what I'm going to do is just add this little flower here, and the big flower is on the copier paper. So just add that just to the bottom. There we go. So we've got a little bit of stamping in there, and then I can just take that little bit of a wipe and just wipe off the bit I don't want to use. So I've got the washi tape here. So I've got a little space here. So again, let's have a look at our stamps. Let's place this back. Let's have a look what else we've got. So I've also got my A5 stamp set, which is called Flower Smudge. And then I can use the flower smudge. Which one did I use? I think it's the top one. I've now got that many stamps out, it's just mad. So I'll just take this stamp set. As you can see, the acetate is quite strong. So I'm just making sure I sort of peel back the acetate and not the stamp. There we go. Take that. So just make sure that this is my area that I've got, and it's only a little area. So let's ink up the stamp and have a look at what we've got. So again, I'm going to ink more of the stamp than I actually need, because you can decide whether you just want the bottom half of the stamp, the full area of the stamp. It's entirely up to you. A beautiful stamp, absolutely beautiful. Just love that. And then you can decide whether you want, let's just have the bottom. Where does that come to? Sometimes it's actually harder to see the low tack tape. So I'm just going to add this little bottom part of that floral. So you don't necessarily have to have this top part. So I'm just having the bottom half of that floral. Let's just take our time just to add that floral, because we've got a little bit of a silhouette area here. and then just lever the acrylic block. Just place that out of the way. Let's just wipe here and wipe here so we can just see what we've got. There we go. But you can see just that in itself is beautiful. Now what I would suggest you do is that you just rub over your layout just with some copier paper, just to make sure that the ink is dry and that you're not going to transfer any of that ink. A clean piece of copier paper would help. So we'll grab a clean piece of copier paper and we'll just give that a little bit of a rub over again. It's worth sort of doing these practices just so that, you know, you don't end up in a mess. And you can see where the low-tack tape is. There's bits of black, so you can see why. Right, let's grab a scrap of card. And what I've got is my new Inktense pencils. There was 28 new colours. So what I'm going to do is decide which colour. So which colour is this? This is Storm Dust 2107. And let me just grab my water brush. Just put a bit of water there. And of course, Tracy's brush is never clean. But there you go. Absolutely nothing new about that. So let's just see what colour. So yes, so it's a nice sort of soft grey. Let me see if you can see that. It's a nice soft grey. So what I'm going to do is get myself comfortable on my chair, which I never can, and I can see where the edge of the low-tack tape is. So I'm just going to go around just where the low-tack tape is. Now, you use any water reactive pencils, pens, distress ink, anything you want that gives you the right colour that you need. So just use anything that gives you a subtle shading of grey. Now, I don't want you to rush this. I'm just going to take my time and just add a little bit of the grey just around each of these areas. And what I'm doing is I'm picking a little bit of that pigment up just to make it a little bit stronger. So I'm just picking a little bit of that pigment up. Now you can use your distress pencils, they are reactive to water, or you can use your Hickory Smoke Distress Oxide. So what I'm going to do now is, hopefully you'll be in better light than I am, because I'm in terrible light. You can also blend, which you will find a lot easier, because you can obviously blend the Distress Oxide ink just over the edges. I'll show you what I mean. So there's one way you can do it, or let me just move this out of the way. Let's show you another way, just so that it's easy. We've got one that's grey. There we go. So you can do it that way, or you can take a brush, take your Hickory Smoke, apply a good layer of ink to your brush, cut and dry foam, blending tools, whatever you've got, and where your low-tack tape is, just go to the edges of the low-tack tape and just blend some of the Hickory Smoke just around the edges which some of you might find a little bit easier than applying the Inktense pencils. So I like to be all inclusive so that you can all do the projects and all do them in different ways. So I started off showing you with the Inktense pencils because what if you haven't got the Distress Oxides or the Distress inks? You know, I need it so that you can be included in creating the project. So just giving this a blend with the Distress Oxide. So just go over again, just blending that ink around the edges. So obviously I don't have to feel for the edges like I do with the pencil because I'm starting on the low tack tape and then just bringing the ink out to it. Also, I can keep adding layers of the ink just so that it gets darker and darker and that blending just gets stronger and stronger. So just take your time and just blend that ink. And just give it a little bit of time. And what I'd say is you need to go over a couple of times. So what you're doing is you're sort of staying here. So you're leaving sort of some white. So there's a white area on each of the blocks that you've left the apertures to. So just make sure that you do leave some white areas. Don't cover the whole lot in grey. Okay. So what we can do now is remove our low tack tape, which, remember, it's hilarious because I can never remember which one I did first. Plus I can never find them or get it off my desk. So what I can do now is just take the low tack tape and just remove it nice and slowly. Just remove that. Don't be in too much of a rush for pulling it away. What you also have to remember is if you're going to use something that's water reactive, it will seep a little bit, you know, like when I use the Inktense pencils. So you have to remember that when you use something water reactive. Plus, don't have long nails like I've got, because pulling the low tack tape up it's just a nightmare. So just take your time and sort of pull it away from you. There we go. Put that in there. And then we can take our one from the top. Just. And it's funny, I can tell the difference with this piece than the other two pieces. The other two pieces I didn't put on my clothes or my skin. This one I can tell the difference. It's a much lower tack. So it does make a difference when you put it on your skin or your clothes. It's definitely not quite as sticky and gloopy. Well, let's just move that on there. So now you can see that you've got your sort of grid detail in there, because we're going to add a floral going up the top. Right, so I'm not going to, so let's just tidy up a little bit. No, I can't be bothered tidying up. So let me look what I've got. Just deciding too much. I just want a nice simple floral. So what it's going to be is probably this one. Let me just add. I really want something. I don't want something that's too much, if that makes sense. How big are you? Let's have a look. So I've got my Build Me Up buttercup. So So I could add this here. Yep. So I've got my Build Me Up buttercup. So let's grab a piece of scrap card, which I've got here. The border acrylic block. Let's just grab another one. So we just grab that border acrylic block. And then we'll use our VersaFine Clair again, just to ink that up. Give it a really good inking. Again, it's a lovely, lovely size stamp. So we'll just give that a really good inking. And it's amazing how quickly the time goes when you're being creative. So again, onto my Pink Frog smooth card. And the size of this, considering it's an A6 stamp set, that is a really, really good size. I absolutely love it. Just grab that. Just give that. And I'm just giving it time just to soak into the card. Just lift that. A beautiful size stamp. Now you would definitely colour first and then cut out. I'm going to do completely the opposite. Are these my scissors that are not quite, that need tightening up? No, it's them. But I'm going to take my flower and I'm just going to cut that out, and I'm going to leave a little bit of a white border. Now, if you wanted to leave it quite monochromatic, that's absolutely fine, so that you've got the classic black and white look. That's fine. I'm going to add a little pop of colour, but imagine doing this a couple of times with different colour combinations, which I think I'm going to do, just so I've got different colour combinations. But it also allows me to use my stamps, so many of them combined together. So it's a nice little technique so that you can combine quite a few of them. And it's a lovely way to see how the stamps all work together so beautifully. Just cut that out nicely. You could also use the looping if you wish. Use the looping and add that. Just keep your hands away from your project. Sort of turn your card, my eyes now itching, turn your card rather than your scissors. For me, it makes it a little bit easier with the cutting out. Sort of stops me from touching the areas that I really shouldn't be touching. There we go. So just leaving a white border. And just take your time when you come to these little bits. You know, your card twists and turns its own way sometimes. Don't worry about that. So you can see this is twisting a little bit. It's absolutely fine. But I'm determined to make sure I sort of get like a jagged leaf. And then cut that out. And the white border just makes things pop a little bit. If you don't like white borders, then obviously you don't have to add the white border. And once your card is like this, it's just all sort of going its own way. Just tell it who's boss and just bend it a little bit. There we go. So what you can do is you can just add that and have the floral in black and white if you wish, but I'm not. I'm going to add a little pop of colour. So let's just make sure my brush is clean, which as you know it isn't because it's grey. And I've got my colours here. I'm going to just pick the colours I've got here. So what have I got? I don't really want gold, Tracy. I thought that was yellow. What have I got? What's that one? That's Golden Sun, which will give me a little bit of depth. And what we've got here, we've got a little bit of lemon. So I've got my Inktense pencil Lemon 0110 and Golden Sun 0225. Takes me ages to look at these colours. So what I'm going to do is just scribble a little bit of the colour onto my Pink Frog smooth card. And what I've done is, just to make the flowers look a bit different than the other flowers, I've got some of the silhouette, sort of a torn, distressed aperture. So it's just gives it a different look. So I'm just going to add a little bit of the yellow. Then to give a little bit of depth, I'm going to use that Golden Sun, just to make it a little bit darker. Just to also gives it a little bit of warmth, the Golden Sun does. Adds a little bit of warmth to it. So I'm just going to go back and add a little bit more yellow. And then what I'm going to do is just add a little bit of water, I'm trying to spritz the water and hold the pens all at the same time. So I'm going to pick up the yellow and then just blend out the colours just with the yellow. Just blend it out. Blend out that colour just so that it's got a little bit of the yellow. And it's nice having the pops of white. And then let's just see if this little bit of the golden colour just adds a little bit of depth. I may have to use another colour just to give a little bit more depth. Let me see. What colour are you? What colour's this? So this is Orange Sorbet 0235. And what I'm going to do, I've got the yellow there. I'm hilarious, I end up with so much over my hand. So I'm just going to take a little bit of that Orange Sorbet 0255. And I'm just going to add a little touch of warmth. That's better. Just warms it up a little bit. Just to give a little bit more depth and a little bit of warmth. Let's pick up a little bit more of that pigment and less water. You can see the pigment on your brush. And what I'm doing is I'm adding layers of that pigment. So I'm going to rinse that off. Then get some clean water. And then I'm just going to add another layer of the yellow. Just to blend the colours out a little bit. There we go. I just need my Posca pen, which is yellow. Posca pen, which is there. And then, bear with me a second. I don't think I've got it in these, have I? I'm looking through my products just for something. So what I've got, let me just break that open. Puffy. So what I've got is I've got my AALL&Create ink. I think I mentioned a few days back that I bought these AALL&Create inks. Which are more fluid than the actual pens, which is great for some different techniques. So what I'm going to do, so this is going to go, yep. So what I'm going to do is add a drop of water there. So literally a little drop of water. Then I'm going to sling the card at the other side of the table just so that it works nicely. Then I'm going to just literally hold my breath and just add one dot of the ink, and I'm just going to just blow that. Now this is translucent, so you can see through it, which is rather nice because it doesn't take any detail away from the stamping. So there we go. So you've seen I've hardly used any pigment on that. It's just a touch. So I'm just going to use that again. So just, it does help if I often try and tell you the colour, doesn't it? You know, be a professional, Tracy. God, Bennett. It's like, how are you supposed to read these things? You know, especially when you're aging and can't see a thing. Hang on. I think they put these tiny bits of text on purpose. Where's the colour? Do you know, I can't see a colour on here. No, I cannot see a colour. There must be liquid watercolour. Yes, I know it's liquid watercolour. Could we have what colour it is? No idea. No idea. So do you know what you do then when you've got no idea? You get a magnifying glass to see if you can see the detail of what they're saying. Primary yellow, lemon yellow primary. I needed a magnifying glass for that. And I should have known that anyway. So you've got that primary yellow so you can mix colours. Oh, good grief. That was painful. So we'll just add a little bit more of that colour. So like I would with Ecoline pens, you can see there's one dot there. I'm just going to layer the colour. And I've not added any more water this time. I've just added layers of that colour. So I'm then going to add another layer, one drop. Nothing more needed. I just want it to have that yellow on there, just so it echoes the yellow that's going to be in my floral. So let's move that out of the way. So the sort of fluid liquid, you know, sort of acrylics really allow me just to do a different technique. Right, so I've now got my floral, which I can then add to my background. Let's lift that up just so then I can add this to the background, lift it a little bit, and you can still see the elements in the background. What I'm also going to do is just have a look at some of the sentiments that I've got. So let's just have a look at here. Do you know, let me just move that. On the Build Me Up Buttercup, it's got, I'm sure it's got just because. Seems rather apt when I created this project, just because. So that seems rather apt for me. So we're going to do just because. Let's just add the sentiment there. So if this is going here, like so, let me see if we can just add the just because. Yes. So we'll use our black ink. I'm now all over the place. Tracy started creating and she's all over the place. What a surprise. So, going to add that just because here, just in the open areas. So in the open areas, it's up to you. You can add different sentiments in each one, different text, anything you want. So we've got the just because just on there, and I created this just because. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to scrunch everything just up sort of a little bit. So just, I don't want it to be, that's it, let's just scrunch it a little bit. Just got a little bit more life. There we go. So then I can take my little flower, but we need the adhesive on the stem first. So add that. And don't forget, you don't have to ink these in black. I could have inked this in a permanent yellow and orange. It doesn't have to be in the black ink. So it's entirely up to you. So I'm going to add a good dollop of pin flare there, just so that it gives me just the dimension that I want. There we go. Let's just push that up. Just gives me the dimension that I need. What I can also do then is use my Posca pen, try and get the lid off, and I can also add some splatters of that nice vibrant yellow just to the open areas, just so that it pops a little bit more. There we go. And it's funny because that yellow of that Posca pen goes all over the place, unlike the white one. And that's the smallest pen. Seems to go everywhere, but just so that you can see that. I'm then going to use some of my washi, which is called Earthy Hash 46. Obviously, and I really need to let those splatters dry. That is usually a good way, just let them dry. So what I'm doing is I've got, if I want to use any of these little bits that are left over, I'll just stick them on my acrylic block, just to, I do like a bit of a jagged edge and it being a little bit torn. Sometimes because I've got these long nails, it's not really helpful, to be honest. There we go. So let's stick that on there. And all these drying a little bit, yeah, because you don't want to smudge the yellow that you've done. So on that washi, it's got the word bloom. So I'm just going to add the word bloom just with my washi, just over the top of the stem. And then I've got these little tiny bits of washi here, and what I'm going to do is, I'm going to add, you see, in doing this, I've also thought of something else that you could do. If you wanted, you could add the washi in the open areas and add full layers of the washi. I'll show you what I mean. Where's the other little bit? Let's put that back on the washi. So I'll show you exactly what I mean. So I'm just going to add, I'm now going to fiddle with the tiniest piece of washi, just because it works rather nicely. And I'll be, you know, you'll be shouting at me at the screen. But these stupid long nails really are driving me mad. They are actually my own nails. They're not false nails or anything. It's just they've grown that long over the last few weeks that it's ridiculous. Right, but we can add further detail to that, which we will. So what I'm going to do is add that now to my card blank, like so. But what I think is that a nice black mat would go lovely on that, because it'll make it pop more. So bear with me a second. So I'm just going to create a black mat, which is 4 1/4 by 7 3/4. Now, as you know by now, those of you that follow me know that sometimes I add a black mat and sometimes I don't add a black mat. But when you've got beautifully black stamped imagery and you add a black mat, it really does sing. It really, really works. Right, so we'll just add this here, like so. Create that there and add that like that. Oh, let's not twist it. That's why sometimes it's better to pick it up, just so that you can get it exactly how you want. I'm then going to add that to the card blank. Looks far better with the black mat on, because it just finishes it off beautifully for me. Finishes that off rather nicely. So we'll then add the black mat to there, like so, just so that you can see that. So we're just going to add that there. I will add a few touches of white, but that's probably better when it's dry. So let's move this out of the way, and then there's so many stamps out here, it's madness. Let me just grab. I'd like to add a little bird. So I'm going to use my quill ends. There we go. I'm going to use the quill ends. Stamp set 908, I'm sure it's 908. So quill ends 908. Just love that stamp. Where are we? Let me grab. That's it. So we'll take the quill ends, scrap of card, and we'll use that black ink. And then just ink that. There we go. Then we can just cut our little bird out. It just sits just beautifully on so many projects, just like the mouse does. I love the little bits and pieces. There we go. That's it. And then let me move this so we've not got it in the way. I can then just sort of add my bird. I think it's going to go, where's the bloom? Needs to look like it's part of the project. Yeah. So let's just add a little bit of pin flare. Just so that it stands up. So it stands proud. There we go. And just while we give that flower a little bit more time. So this is your project, which I absolutely love. Just shows all the details off. Absolutely love that. Let's add some white splatters. Add some white splatters to our project. Make sure that you hit the focal image, just so that that pops a bit more with a little bit of that white in, which really helps. And that is your project finished. I just absolutely love it. But if you wanted to change it a bit, let me grab a piece of card. So I've got a piece of card here, no idea what size it is, so let's have a look. 4. Let's make it 4 by 7.5. So I've got a piece of card exactly the same size as I had before, 4 by 7.5. So what I'm going to do is, if you want to take your washi, so what did I say this was? Hash 46 earthy. Now this has got all words on that are nature and nature inspired, so you can't go wrong. So if are we going to have it this way? Are we going to have it that way this time? No, this way. I'm going to drive you mad. So I'm just going to hold this up just so that I can place it. So place your washi. We can just tear that around, and then we can add the washi across here, exactly like we did before. Again, tear that, add it around, and then let's make that one a little bit bigger. Tear that, and you've then got the same apertures that you can stamp into, which I will do as well. So you can stamp into these apertures and do exactly the same. So you can use your washes another way. So I think I'll stamp into these, and I might add a red flower, but it just gives you another idea. So I'll just bring in that card again, and I hope you enjoyed that. I hope you enjoyed the process, just because. And another little idea for you of how to use your stamps. So love to all, and I'll see you all soon. Bye for now.